A long time ago, there were many cities in the world of beasts. As many as 100,000 beasts live in the remarkably busy Juantengai. The grandmaster who's been leading them for a long time announced that he is going to retire and reincarnate as a god. He didn't know what kind of god he wanted to become, but he allowed a successor to be chosen. He told everyone to prepare for this. Strength and dignity were obvious requirements. A beast called Laozen made a name for himself right after. He is a great person who's calm, brave and has a lot of disciples. He's also the father of 2 children. He was deemed to be the next grandmaster. It was what everyone was saying. But there was another candidate. His name was Kumatetsu. As his name suggests, he looked like a bear, was swift like a monkey, and possessed bottomless strength. And wielded his sword masterfully. When it comes to strength, he was said to surpass even Laozen. However, he was violent, selfish, disrespectful, didn't have a single disciple let alone any children. The movie opens up with a 9-year-old boy with an angry facial expression in the middle of a crowded, bustling Shibuya. Loads of people walking fast-paced to their destinations, police apprehending troublesome teenagers. We soon find out that he is on the run from something. He finds a quiet dim-lit alleyway where he decides to rest and eat his tofu whilst checking how much money he has left. He stops to confirm the little sounds he heard. Behind an empty can he finds what he presumes to be a baby mouse. He broke off some of his food to the mouse who was reluctant and cautious to eat the food. The boy resonates with the mouse's situation who had nowhere to go, and they soon became friends. He goes back home with his pet, where his family members were present, and the items in the house was being parked away. It appears that his mother died in an accident, and as the only boy in their family he will be taken away and raised as a successor. They try to console him while he was sitting next to the window. Agitated by his unusual quietness, they yell at him to respond to them. He then gets up and persistently asked why his father isn't present. They told him to forget his father and that his mother, already divorced him a while ago in the court, gave them full custody of him. He responded by saying he will live by himself and declares to become strong and pay them back. He explodes in anger and shouted he hates both the family and his dad. He then left the house in anger, roaming about in the city while repeating "I hate you" multiple times. He unintentionally said it out loud and startled the people passing by. He quickly left the area when he realizes all eyes were locked onto him. Moments after he left the area, a dark phantom of himself manifested, repeating the same words "I hate you" and slowly disappeared. 2 strangers passing by took notice of him in between parked bicycles. And one of them approaches the boy to talk to him. He asked where his family was. Only to be met with "Shut up and go away. If you keep talking to me, I will kill you." The stranger closed in on him to look at his face. The boy was startled and scared when he finally saw who he was talking to. He shouted, "A beast." The stranger let go of his face, shoved him back and said, "Not bad." While they were walking away he turned around and asked the boy to come with him, but his companion stopped him and dragged him away. Out of curiosity, he decided to follow them, but they were nowhere to be found in the crowd. He stood there wondering if what he saw was a dream. From behind, a police officer grabbed his arm firmly asking if he had run away from home. They asked about his guardian's phone number which triggered flashbacks of his family that he hates. While pulling him away, he shouted no and snatched his arm back to make a run for it. The police officers chased him closely. Soon they lost sight of him. While on the run, the 2 strangers from earlier, squeezing into an alleyway, entered his peripheral. He then stopped for a moment. However, 2 police officers closing in meant that he had to make a decision quickly. With no hesitation, he followed them into the dark dim-lit alleyway. He found himself in a structure with many pathways, which made him go into circles several times. While wondering if he was still in Shibuya, he heard sounds of footsteps and a shadow. He quickly went in that direction and lost his way again. He was confused and didn't know which direction to take. Suddenly, a donkey carrying a load appeared behind him. It slowly pushed him steadily without stopping until they were out of the alleyway. He soon noticed the strange environment full of beast men. All eyes were locked onto him. Scared and startled, he ran backwards to where he came from only to realize it was sealed. Wanting to find his way out, he made haste running into the crowds. With no direction he was captured by 3 wolf men. When they realized he was human, they wickedly started to voice out suggestions on what to do with him. He shouted help, and an old monk quickly came to his rescue. He told them not to say such wicked things and took him away from them. He encouraged him not to be afraid. He introduced himself as Hyakushubu and that he is a monk. He promised to show him the way out. He also explains to him that beasts who could reincarnate into gods and humans live in 2 separate worlds. While they were talking, the bear-looking stranger from earlier stopped them in their tracks. He looked happy and snatched the boy away. The monk was confused, snatched him back and said he was a lost child. The bear told him that, starting from now the boy is his disciple. The monk disagreed and said, a human can't be his disciple. The bear replied, he doesn't care, any disciple is a disciple. His other companion appeared behind him and told the bear is a bad idea. The monk asked a monkey, called Tathara, to explain what's going on. He explained by saying that the grandmaster instructed the bear to find a disciple if he wants to be his successor. However, unlike Laozen, his rival, no one wants to be his disciple, so they went sightseeing in the human world and the bear took interest in the boy. The monk was worried if the boy was kidnapped. The bear replied that he followed them on his own and that he can pick anyone he sees potential in as a disciple and walked away with the boy. The monk wasn't surprised about how unreasonable the bear was and continued to worry about the boy. The boy followed the bear into his home. The boy asked what he meant about a disciple. The bear told him it means he will be providing for him from now on and he hates whiny people. The boy told him he never agreed to be his disciple. The bear told him he followed him because he has nowhere to go. The boy angrily asked if he pities him. The bear replied that he can only say that when he is a grown-up. The bear asked for his name and age. The boy refused to give his name and used his finger to gesture his age. The bear names him Kuyuta from his age, which means 9-year-old boy. He then walks out to look at the beast city. He suddenly hears someone calling him, Ren, behind him. He turned around and saw his mom, who asked him to come eat breakfast. His mom disappeared and he realizes it's a hallucination. All his bottled-up emotion surfaced, which led him to sob silently. The bear, who woke up from the chirping birds and morning sunlight, quickly realizes that the boy is missing. He came to a conclusion that another one of his disciple run away again. It was no surprise to him. He goes on about his day to fetch some eggs, where he find Kuyuta sleeping in the chicken shed. He waked him up with a wooden hammer and a steel pan. He told him to eat and cheer up, however Kuyuta argues he doesn't eat raw eggs. The bear, called Kumatesu, demonstrated how to eat it, however, Kuyuta still refused to eat them, which led to a fight. He ran away into the city, cover his face with a cloth. He came across two of his peers, one of them was eating snacks unknowingly teasing Kuyuta, who was hungry. They saw their father and quickly run to him with admiration in their eyes. While catching up with his kids, his subordinate whispered to him that it is time to leave. Leaving the children disappointed. The wild boar, called Laozen, noticed his rival Kumatetsu in the crowd and approached him to catch up. Kumatetsu asked him if he has seen his disciple, a human child who run off somewhere. The wild boar was startled when he heard human. Moments later, his subordinates found a human boy. Kumatetsu was happy to finally find Kuyuta. However, Laozen stopped him in his tracks, strongly suggestion to Kumatetsu to return the human child where he found him. The bear disagreed. Laozen explains his reasons, which was that human are weak and can easily harbor darkness deep in their hearts. Kumatetsu also strongly suggests Laozen to stay out of business between him and his disciple. This argument between two grandmaster candidates attracted the crowd's attention and quickly escalated into a duel. At the beginning of the duel, Laozen demonstrated correct etiquettes while Kumatetsu refused to, which attracted boos from the crowd who were agitated by his behavior. Kuyuta asked if they were having a sword fight. The cow explained that the grandmaster has banned unsheathing swords. He took the opportunity to sneak attack and escape. In the first round, a fist fight, Kumatetsu tries to imitate Laozen, only to be striked with 2 punches. He then gets back up for the second round and transforms into a huge bear. Laozen followed and also transformed. They repeatedly clashed. Kumatetsu seized the upper hand with his brute strength. When the spectators noticed Laozen, their favorite, was being pushed back, they started encouraging and cheer him on. Kuyuta was worried that not a single person was cheering for Kumatetsu. He realizes how lonely he was. The crowd's cheering in return manifested into strength for Laozen. He started to push Kumatetsu back slowly and steadily into the ground. Kumatetsu quickly got back up for the third round, a sword fight. It became a battle of attrition. They were evenly matched. Soon Laozen proved to be the better swordsman. Kumatetsu kept taking hits in the face, which agitated Kuyuta. He shouted, "Don't lose." Everyone was startled to hear someone cheering for Kumatetsu. Kumatetsu kept his head in a pivot looking for the direction of the voice. He locked onto Kuyuta, who was cheering for him. Laozen took the slip moment of Kumatetsu's lack of concentration and strike him hard in the face. The grandmaster appeared out of nowhere and stopped the fight. He told them that it was too early for their duel. Laozen complained about the human child. The grandmaster saw Kumatetsu's determination and declared that he will take responsibility. Laozen was unhappy about the grandmaster's decision, but he had no choice but to respect it. He then dispersed the crowd. Kumatetsu got up and locked eyes with Kuyuta but couldn't hold eye contact. On the way back home, he was angry and agitated by the loss. While lying on his couch, Kuyuta asked that if he can become strong by staying with him, he doesn't mind being his disciple. Kumatetsu wasn't convinced. He took the initiative to sit behind a table and started to eat the rice the way Kumatetsu demonstrated in the morning. Even though he was struggling to chug it down, he continued eating. His determination raised Kumatesu's spirit to the extent that he promised to train him thoroughly. In the morning, Kyuuta changed into the Beast World local outfit. Kumatesu told him to watch closely as he demonstrated some basic sword techniques. Kyuuta watched in awe until he was given the cane to attempt it himself. The monk encouraged him, but sadly, he failed miserably. Kumatesu was agitated why Kyuuta can't do something basic. He cried that it was his first time. The monkey was amused. The monk advised Kumatesu to explain it in simple words, which also ended in complete failure, as he was a bad teacher. He tried his best to explain it as best as he could, but it didn't reach Kyuuta. He found it difficult to put his experience as a swordsman into words. After struggling to find the simplest words, he blurted out that Kyuuta should grasp the sword in his heart. However, it was a silly explanation, or perhaps too profound for a beginner like Kyuuta to grasp. He continued to instruct Kyuuta to do the movement, which he refused to because he didn't get a proper explanation. As short-tempered as he was, Kumatesu got frustrated and left the training ground. The monk followed to console him, which left the monkey and Kyuuta alone. The monkey discouraged Kyuuta by telling him that usually a disciple need 5 to 10 years of training and that if Kyuuta is taking things as a joke, he should go back to the human world. After a while, the monk was sitting alone by himself. Kyuuta took the initiative to approach him and asked what is a good disciple is supposed to do. The monk guided Kyuuta on what a disciple should do, such as cleaning, laundry, and cooking. While Kyuuta was out in town to get groceries, he encountered Laozen's youngest son, Jiromaru, who bullied him. His older brother stepped in and stopped the fight before it went too far. He scolded his younger brother by telling him not to bully the weak and pitiful as their father advised. They go on to brag about their father in Kyuuta's presence. Kyuuta got up disturbed about being called weak and pitiful. Kumatesu returned back to his home and found it transformed. He was surprised and uncomfortable how clean the house was. He shouted, "Who did something unnecessary?" and barged into the kitchen, only to find bruised-faced Kyuuta cooking with the monk. At the dinner table, Kumatesu makes fun of Kyuuta for letting children bully him. Kyuuta didn't defend himself and admitted to being weak and pitiful at the moment. He then strikes back at Kumatesu for being lazy, short-tempered, a bad teacher, compared to his rival Laozen, that is why he lost the duel. Another argument sparked again which led to Kumatesu chasing Kyuuta in and around the house. The monk failed to end the argument. The monkey found himself alone with Kumatesu, consoling him. Kumatesu kept angrily complaining about Kyuuta. The monkey's advice was to send Kyuuta back to the human world, as a master-disciple relationship will clearly not work. Out of nowhere, the grandmaster appeared again and gave Kumatesu many letters of introduction. He suggested that they should travel around the country and ask various famous sages what real strength is. He then suddenly disappeared. The monkey Tathara hesitantly encouraged Kumatesu to quickly embark on the trip as it is a request from the grandmaster. Kumatesu, Kyuuta, Tathara and Yakushobu embarked on a journey to find a clue to what real strength is. They passed through various terrains and finally reached the first sage. He responded by saying his arms weren't very strong, but he can create illusions. Illusions can sometimes be more real than reality itself, that is, what strength is. Kumatesu was unsatisfied. The second sage responded, why seek something like strength? He possesses some telekinetic powers, but no matter how strong he is, there are things he can't win against. The third sage answered, they are asking the wrong person, whether it's rainy or windy, she simply sits there like a stone. The monk asked why, she replied to forget time, the world and herself, in order to transcend reality. They then asked the fourth sage, he replied, I'm not one to philosophize, I catch my prey faster than anyone else, and the one who gets to taste everything in this world wins. Kumatesu became more confused about strength than at the beginning of the trip. On the way home, he strongly advises Kyuuta to not listen to the sages. Tathara complained about almost being eaten. Kyuuta was impressed about how strength have many meanings. He teased Kumatesu for being a bad teacher. Kumatesu replied back by saying, Kyuuta is a slow learner, and if he likes them so much, he should sit on a desk with paper and learn what strength is. The argument continued endlessly. At their camp, Kyuuta, who couldn't sleep, came out and found the monk by himself. Over tea, Kyuuta tells him about his worries that Kumatesu is right that he is a slow learner. The monk disagreed and said that Kyuuta learned laundry and cleaning quickly. He argued that the problem lied with Kumatesu. His techniques are a mess because he created them himself, he had no parents nor a master. He became strong all by himself, his talent is the root of his misfortune. Someone who never listened to anyone can give proper advice himself. Thus, his principle is to figure things out by yourself. In the tents, Tathara found himself alone with Kumatesu. He commented that Kyuuta was similar to Kumatesu when he was little. He was weak, noisy and never listened to anyone. Only the grandmaster tolerated him. Although, he will prefer it if Kuyuta leaves, he advises Kumatetsu to remember what he really wanted as a kid if he is determined to be Kuyuta's master. They finally got back from the trip. Kuyuta was lying on his back in the living room one morning with his pet. He kept wondering what the monk meant by the principle of figuring things out by yourself. His pet mouse climbed on his chest while making noises. Kuyuta imitated the mouse to make fun of it. A hallucination of his mom appeared while he was having a good laugh. She whispered, "Become him." He quickly got up to find who that was. More importantly, he focused on what he heard. Become him. While Kumatetsu was training, Kuyuta, who was sweeping, decided to become one with him by imitating all his movements. Because he couldn't do it without Kumatetsu noticing it. He decided to mark out his footprints and learn his movements first. Kumatetsu caught on to what Kuyuta was doing and thought he was making fun of him, which annoyed him. Kumatetsu, who had enough, tried to run away but was ambushed by the monk. The monk commented that Kuyuta is like a young duckling following his parents. He tells Kumatetsu that Kuyuta intends to learn from scratch like a baby following his parent. Kumatetsu finally understood what the monk meant and consented to what Kuyuta was doing. The monk commented no parents would be angry if their child wanted to become like them. Tathara came to give words of discouragement and called their act a farce. Kumatetsu shut him up and told him not to distract them. This became how they trained. Kuyuta was peeling a fruit in the kitchen one night. He unconsciously started following Kumatetsu's footstep sounds, who was outside. He came to a realization that, even without looking, he can tell Kumatetsu's movement by the sound of his footsteps. He decided to test it out. One morning, while Kumatetsu was stretching, Kuyuta suddenly attacked him with a broomstick. The monk and Tathara were confused. They soon realized that Kuyuta was completely evading Kumatetsu's attempt to catch him. They asked him what was going on. He explained by saying, after studying Kumatetsu's footwork for a long time, he can now predict his next move. They were both surprised. Tathara admitted he now admires Kuyuta. He also suggested Kumatetsu should learn from Kuyuta. Prideful Kumatetsu refused reluctantly. Kuyuta made him a deal. He asked in exchange Kumatetsu should teach him how to hold a sword and how to throw a punch. They started to learn from each other. Kumatetsu was harsh, Kuyuta was even harsher. Tathara and the monk discussed reading the enemy and understanding them as Kumatetsu's greatest weakness and that he will benefit from this greatly. Another encounter in the park with Laozen's youngest son and his crew ended badly for them. Jirumaru steps forward to deal with Kuyuta personally. 3 wolves placed their bets on him. Jirumaru was defeated. Surprisingly, his reaction was that of admiration and praise. He told Kuyuta he likes strong people. He asked to be friends and invited Kuyuta to eat sweets at his house. Kuyuta steadily made progress as years passed. He also steadily grew taller. The grandmaster and Laozen observed Kumatetsu and Kuyuta from a distance. Laozen was impressed on how a human improved at that speed. The grandmaster pointed out that the one who progressed the most was Kumatetsu. His moves were now sharp and refined. While in the middle of training, Kumatetsu asked Kuyuta for his age. He gestured 17 with his hand. Kumatetsu named him 17-year-old boy. He retorted and said he is fine with Kuyuta, which means 9-year-old boy. At their doorstep, Tathara was tending to a long queue of local beast men, begging to be Kumatetsu's disciples and become strong like Kuyuta. Kumatetsu and Kuyuta were both having breakfast. An argument sparked about Kumatetsu still treating Kuyuta as a child. The monk advised to treat Kuyuta as an adult. Kuyuta finished and left Kumatetsu mid-sentence. He got agitated and chased him down into the town. They passed by a long queue. Jirumaru was happy to see Kuyuta. He complimented them by saying they both got better. His older brother replied in anger that he shouldn't compare their father to a blockhead like Kumatetsu. While on the run, Kuyuta stumbled into a place he faintly recognized. He slowly followed the light. He realized he had crossed a border into the human world, Shibuya. He went to a library, picked up a book and started to read it with difficulty. He saw a schoolgirl standing next to him. He asked her how to read a character. She replied to him that it meant, well. A group noise from some teenagers attracted her attention. She boldly approached them and told them that they should leave the library if they are going to be noisy. She returned back to find that the strange boy has disappeared. While she was leaving the library, the girls from earlier were waiting to pay her back. Kuyuta appeared behind the boys and silently took them out. At the nearest car park, she lectured him that violence is bad, but thanked him either way. He replied by asking her what another character meant. She looked at him in disbelief. He emphasized further that he doesn't know anything and that he hasn't been to school since primary. She offered to teach him and introduced herself as Kaide. In return, he told her his name was Ren. She started giving him private lessons in the library. In the following days and weeks to come by, he was completely immersed in studying books from the human world. She helped him shop for outfits in human world to look normal. Kumatetsu started to notice Kuyuta's unusual absence. The monk and Tathara were worried. While hanging out, Kuyuta opens up about having a master who took care of him. He described Kumatetsu as an idiot who always picks fights. Kaede immediately sensed their closeness. She admits being jealous of Kuyuta's relationship with his master. She goes on to disclose how distant she is from her parents. They never fight with each other, as she always do, what was expected of her since kindergarten. They don't care about how she feel. She realized that, if she doesn't find out who she is, she will come to not recognize herself. She tells him of her plan to move out once she graduates university and live life for herself. After saying what she was really thinking out loud, she breathed out heavily in relief, telling him that she has never opened up to someone like this. She revealed to him that there is a limit to what she can teach him and that he should think about going to university. Kuyuta agreed after giving it some thoughts. She took him to sign up for Daikin, a university entrance test for people who didn't graduate from high school. The teacher discouraged him by saying his chances is slim at best. A female teacher who overheard their conversation approached him right after. She encouraged them, apologized for the male teacher's behavior, and gave them plausible options. At the test registration, he was told that his certificate is expired, however he had a family in their records, so he can make a new one. They gave him an address of his father's home. He decided to go and find his father. With Shibuya's address system he was able to find his father's residence with ease. However, his father was not at home. Disappointed, he decided to go home. On his way back he came across someone he thought was his dad. He stopped, approached him and asked the stranger if he remembers him. The stranger struggled to recall who that is. Kuyuta was yet disappointed again. He turned to leave. After taking a few steps, he heard the stranger call him Ren. His dad ran and hugged him tightly, crying. It turned out that he found out about Kuyuta's mom a lot later. When he finally did, he searched for Kuyuta continuously even after the police gave up. He met Kaede at her school and told her the good news. He wondered if he will be able to live a normal life like everyone else. He realized what was stopping him was his master and his life in the beast world. At home in the beast world, Kumatetsu confronts Kuyuta on a book in his bed. Kuyuta reveals to everyone that he was to attend a human school. Kumatetsu asks him about his goal to become strong. Kuyuta replied, he's strong enough. Kumatetsu disagrees and told him that he is far from being strong. This sparked a heated argument. Before he went out he stopped and said he found his father and he is going to live with him in the human world from now on. Kumatetsu chased him down to stop him. Kuyuta skillfully took him to the ground and left. Kumatetsu struggles to train his new disciples, which frustrated him. The monk and Tathara come to a conclusion that the real reason for his grumpiness was because Kuyuta left him. The monk commented that Kumatetsu saw himself as Kuyuta's foster parent. Kuyuta meets up with his real father for dinner. On their way to his father's house he asked about who was taking care of him till now. He wanted to visit and thank them properly. Kuyuta replied it was too sudden. His father apologized. He goes on to say optimistic things about their future together and that he remembers Kuyuta and his mom like it was yesterday. He wanted to start over. Kuyuta became angry how his father was acting oblivious to the whole situation like it never happened and how he talks like he understood Kuyuta and knows a lot about him but he don't because Kuyuta hasn't told him anything. They argued and Kuyuta left and said he is not coming over. While walking by himself, he started to regret what he said to his dad. He also kept remembering Kumatetsu and how he left him. He started running to get away from these regrets. He got tired and decided to stop for a breather. He looked to his left and saw the old him manifested into a dark phantom with a hole in the chest, saying, I hate you. It suddenly disappeared. Kuyuta looked left and right to find it. He looked in the mirror behind him and saw a terrifying image of himself with a hole in his chest. He screamed, run away scared. He went to the library and found Kaede. She saw an unusual dark expression on his face. He asked is he human or a beast? He pressed her to the fence asking, what am I? Kaede responded by slapping him. She hugged him straight right after. She told him in his ear that he is not alone. Herself and everyone else feels unimaginable pain sometimes and everything is going to be fine. Kuyuta calmed down and thanked her. She then wrapped a red string on his wrist. She told him whenever the feeling he felt just now repeats itself, he should look at the charm to calm him down. Kuyuta returned to the beast world and saw there were loads of decoration. Jirumaru appeared behind him and invited him to his house. At his residence he informs Kuyuta over tea that the grandmaster had decided a day for his dad and Kumatetsu's duel. It was set for the next day. He advised Kuyuta to cheer for his master and set aside any differences. He told Kuyuta that it doesn't matter who wins or loses, they are still going to be friends after the match. His older brother appeared and offered to walk Kuyuta to the entrance. Once they reached the entrance, Kuyuta was about to thank him when suddenly he felt a punch in his lower belly. Ichiro Hiku repeatedly kicked him while he was down shouting, a blockhead like Kumatetsu can never beat his dad and the winner is already decided. While on the floor, Kuyuta, struggling to keep his eyes open, he saw a black hole in Ichiro Hiku's chest. It was the day of the match to decide the new grandmaster. The current grandmaster gave a short speech. He announced that he was going to reincarnate as the god of decisiveness. The two rivals were welcomed on the stage with loud cheering. Out of frustration, Kumatesu roared on top of his voice. Laozen saw this as a contest and roared back even louder to capture the heart of the audience. Kuyuta arrived to watch, but blended in the crowd. The start of the match was announced. Right at the beginning, Kumatetsu transformed into his beast form, fiercely strikes Laozen, and sent him flying into the walls. Laozen came out unscathed. Kumatetsu charges again, but Laozen was prepared this time. He evaded it skillfully. He continued to evade all of Kumatetsu's attacks. Soon, Laozen won a face-to-face clash. Before he could get up to draw his sword, Laozen was already charging at him. Kumatetsu lost his sword after a direct hit. He quickly got up to get his sword, but was blocked off by Laozen. Kumatesu continued to take direct hits until he was sent to the ground. Kuyuta, who wanted to hide himself, was annoyed enough. He ran to the front and exposed himself. The monk shouted. Kuyuta cheer him on. Kuyuta told him to get up, but that sparked an argument in front of everyone. Tathara and the monk were worried. After enough insults from Kuyuta, Kumatetsu angrily got up and charged to take his sword. Laozen again blocked him, but Kumatetsu had predicted that and already appeared behind him. A sword fight ensued. They were evenly matched. Kuyuta was cheering him on the side. Tathara and the monk noticed Kumatetsu was laughing. This reminded them of the face he makes when he is training with Kuyuta. A sage commented that he has reached a state of perfect concentration. Laozen was soon getting pushed back. Jiromaru was paranoid for his dad. Ichiro smacked him and told him to shut up. Kumatetsu's strike destroyed Laozen's sword sheath. He quickly disarmed him and landed a perfect punch, which knocked out Laozen. Countdown started. After the 10th countdown, Kumatetsu was declared the winner. He immediately went to Kuyuta's side, argued with him and high-five. He was now the new grandmaster. The grandmaster looked behind and realized the sword was missing. It was launched into Kumatetsu's back. He stumbled backwards, confused. A loud wicked laughter was heard across the stage. Ichiro used telekinesis to launch the sword. He kept shouting that his father won. He didn't lose to a blockhead. A black hole appeared in his chest. He used telekinesis to push the sword further. He continued to laugh at Kuyuta's despair. His father scolded him, but he was already corrupted. Kuyuta couldn't hold his emotions. A black hole appeared in his chest. He drew his sword ready to take revenge. He used telekinesis to launch the sword towards Ichiro. The pet mouse jumped in his face to distract him and draw his attention to his wrist. The hole in his chest closed up immediately he saw the red charm. The sword also stopped and fell on the floor. Darkness completely consumed Ichiro until he vanished. Kuyuta woke up from his dream and realized he was in Kumatetsu's hospital. He was both relieved and sorry when he saw Kumatetsu was alive. Laozen and his family were sitting on a bench outside with Grandmaster. The Grandmaster argued Ichiro's telekinesis is not a beast's ability. It is a power that stems from the darkness within a human heart. Which meant Ichiro is human, not a beast's child, therefore he was adopted. The Grandmaster asks Laozen to explain his reason. In a flashback, we see Laozen in the human world. He heard a child crying and followed the sound. He found a human baby who was abandoned. Even though he knew humans could harbor darkness in their heart, out of arrogance, he thought if he raised that child himself, it won't happen. At a young age, Ichiro realized he is different and asked why he doesn't have a tusk. Laozen always lied to him by telling him, it will grow one day. The Grandmaster replied, the more he believed he was the son of a beast, the more insecure he became. That is how a hole grew in his heart. Jiromaru was worried about his older brother. Laozen and his wife wondered if they could live with Ichiro again and start over. The Grandmaster replied, as long as the darkness isn't expelled, there's nothing we can do. Kuyuta, who was eavesdropping, picked up his sword and decided to go make things right. On his way, Tathara and the monk stopped him in his tracks. Tathara advised, it's best not to get involved. The monk raised his voice at Kuyuta for the first time. He shouted at Kuyuta that revenge wouldn't solve anything. He also didn't want him to end up like Kumatetsu. With a serious expression on his face, Kuyuta stared down the monk. The monk quickly gave up after seeing the determination in his eyes. Kuyuta explained to them that, in a way, Ichiro and him are the same. He could have been the one who fell into darkness. But, because he had good people around him, he remained himself. He opened up about how grateful he is to them. His speech made them emotional. They then give him their full support. Tathara and the monk found themselves alone beside Kumatetsu's hospital bed. They talk about past memories from when Kuyuta was little and now that he has grown up. They both share how proud they really are. Kumatetsu, regaining consciousness, broke the conversation. Kaede received a message from Kuyuta while she was studying. She stopped everything she was doing, prepared, and silently sneaked out. Kuyuta met up with Kaede, gave her a book called The Whale, and thanked her for everything. He informs her that he has an enemy to fight and that this was farewell. Kaede refused to accept it. Amidst their argument, Kuyuta heard someone chanting his name on his left. He looked on his left and found Ichiro Hiku in the middle of the crowd. He was approaching slowly. Kuyuta told Kaede to run. She did the opposite and firmly wrapped her hand in his palm. Ichiro Hiku started chasing them, so they both had to run. Kuyuta let go of Kaede's hand to attack him head-on. They clashed with their swords. Kuyuta was on the defensive. He quickly gained his ground and pushed Ichiro Hiku back. He wasted no time in landing a direct hit. The second time, it was blocked. Ichiro Hiku's arm started to grow in size. He sent Kuyuta flying with one punch. Kaede helped Kuyuta up. He decided to find a better place for the fight. Ichiro Hiku picks up the book that says, "Whale." Kuyuta shouted to warn people not to go that way, but nobody listened. A giant shadow of a whale appeared in the streets. Kuyuta saw the whale approaching. He shouted at the drivers in the traffic to get out, but nobody listened. Until the whale was right below them, destroying their vehicles. This created an explosion. Kuyuta saw this and questioned himself, how can he defeat him? Kaede dragged Kuyuta to the train station. Ichiro Hiku tried to chase them, but lost track of them. On the train, Kuyuta went over a plan to defeat him in his head. He planned to open up his heart and collect all of Ichiro Hiku's darkness inside him, stab himself and disappear with the darkness altogether. Kaede broke his thought process by telling him what she was thinking. She told him the reason she held his hand, even though she was scared, was because Kuyuta encourages her. When she met him, she found someone who really enjoys studying like herself. That made her happy. So they're in this fight together. Ichiro Hiku's search for Kuyuta created many explosions, causing the human world to tremble, including the beast world. The people of the beast world were complaining that humans should have never been allowed to step foot in the beast world. Amidst their discussions, Kumatetsu appeared. People made way for him as he approached. He was determined to help solve the issue his disciple was facing. He asked the grandmaster to tell him the way to solve the issue and be of help. Only he knew of a way. He wished to fill the hole in Kuyuta's heart. The grandmaster revealed that the only way was for him to hand over his right to incarnate as a god to Kumatetsu. Everyone was puzzled by this revelation. They suddenly realized it was possible, as Kumatetsu was now a grandmaster himself. The grandmaster approached Kumatetsu and asked him, there is no turning back if he agrees to it. Kumatetsu answered with determination in his eyes that he's ready. The grandmaster was not surprised, as Kumatetsu was not one to hesitate once he decides something. Back to the ongoing fight. Kuyuta opened up his chest to collect all of the darkness. The wind blew the mouse away, however it was saved by Kaede. Whilst Kuyuta was in the midst of absorbing the whale, he heard someone call out his name. He looked up and saw a sword in red dazzling light descend in front of him. Tathara and the monk told him that was Kumatetsu. They explained that he reincarnated and took the shape of that sword. At that moment, Kuyuta started remembering memories of Kumatetsu. The sword got up and filled the void in his heart. Tears started rolling down his face uncontrollably. Kumatetsu talked to him and told him to stop whining, he hates whiny people. Kuyuta now had confidence to face the whale head-on. The sword kept guiding Kuyuta. Ichiro Hiku approached while teleporting in intervals. Kuyuta assumed his stance. Kumatetsu told him to strike now. With one strike, the darkness was expelled from Ichiro Hiku. Ichiro Hiku was woken up in the morning by the chirping birds and the chiming bells. He found his family fast asleep on the side of his bed. He found a red string on his wrist. He immediately remembered it was Kuyuta's. Kuyuta was having an imaginary conversation with Kumatetsu in his heart. The news reported that last night a driverless truck caused an accident, which led to an explosion in Shibuya. There were no deaths, only minor injuries. There were many witnesses who claim they saw a whale, but there was nothing on the CCTV cameras to prove it. There was a celebration in the beast world to celebrate Kuyuta's victory. The monk and Tathara stood there proud. The grandmaster was disappointed that he had to stay grandmaster because he gave away his right to reincarnate to Kumatetsu. The crowd gave way for a girl who was Kaede. Kuyuta asked why she was here. She replied she got an invitation. She returned to him the farewell book and presented to him with an application for university entrance exam. After giving it some thought, Kuyuta agreed to take it. The celebration continued. After the celebration, Kuyuta met up with his father. He left Jun Tengai and never held a sword again, but there is no better swordsman like him who possesses a unique sword in his heart called Kumatetsu. He is a unique swordsman.